and tell us.
Of course, the president said on Friday, I welcome a debate with those who disagree with me about these programs. So you can't talk about these programs publicly, so that's going to be a bit of a muted debate. Glenn, I want to continue on just how expansive this program has become and how it's even gone past the original confines of what people expected the Patriot Act to be interpreted as. James Sensenbrenner, who is a Republican, very conservative Republican, who is the author of the Patriot Act, says this goes well beyond what he and others anticipated the Patriot Act to be used for. Can you give us some more specifics about just how much more expansive from what you've told? I mean, I'm sure I'm sure we're going to learn much more in the coming weeks and months, and so many things that we're being told right now will end up not being true as well, because that's the way stories like this go. But from what you know right now, how has this administration and the Bush administration expanded the Patriot Act well beyond what the authors intended originally?
So let me just answer that in two ways. So if you go back and read the debates about the Patriot Act when they were first introduced, the reason the Patriot Act was so controversial was because it was often the case in the past that in order for the government to be able to target individuals and convince a court to let them have access to their records, you had to have probable cause that the person was engaged in wrongdoing. And what the Patriot Act did was it lowered that standard. So it said now all you need is a reasonable basis to believe that the person is involved in wrongdoing before you can get their records. And that was incredibly controversial. It was considered a radical departure from the way that the United States is supposed to work. But even back then, nobody thought, and just go read the debates about the Patriot Act in late 2001, early 2002, nobody had any inkling that the government would ever use the Patriot Act not to target specific individuals and say there's reasonable basis or probable cause to believe they're wrongdoing, but to use the Patriot Act to say this entitles us to collect records for every single American, regardless of whether or not we've done anything wrong. That was never the intention, even by the radical people who advocated the Patriot Act, that is how it would be used, and that's what Senator Wyden and Senator Udall have been saying. And let me just say one other thing. More broadly speaking, what the NSA is, we are putting trillions of dollars into developing extremely sophisticated technology. The idea, the objective of this is to enable the NSA to monitor every single conversation and every single form of human behavior anywhere in the world. And if that is something that we want our government to be doing, we should have an open debate about that, not have it done in secret.
An incredibly important question that affects all of us. We have to put it in perspective. I want to bring Richard Haas in, but quickly, I just want an answer yes or no. Isn't it the case that reviewing of emails or any wiretapping cannot take place without an additional warrant from a judge and a review? I mean, it's not like there's haphazard probing into all of our personal emails. Can we put this into context so we understand exactly what's going on?
Yeah, I'll put it into context for you. The White House talking points that you're using are completely misleading and false. The whole point of what the Bush administration did when it disregarded and violated the FISA law, and then when Congress on a bipartisan basis enacted a new surveillance law in 2008, was to enable the NSA to read emails between people in the United States and people outside of the United States without having first to go to a FISA court and get a warrant. The only time individual warrants are needed is when two people are both inside the United States and are both American citizens. But under that law, the U.S. government and the NSA have the power and exercise the power to listen in on telephone conversations and read emails involving all kinds of American citizens. And the Senate has been repeatedly asking for the numbers of how many Americans they're doing that to, and the NSA keeps saying, and it's false, they can't provide those numbers. So those talking points that you're reading from are completely false, as anybody who's paid even remote attention to the surveillance debates know over the last 10 years.
Glenn, I'd like to ask a question. Is this legal or illegal? Or Richard Haas, can you help me out here since Glenn doesn't want to answer the question? Is the law being broken here?
I did answer your question.
I question the law. I question all the issues that this raises. I'm personally concerned as well, but I'd like to put this in perspective. Is the law being broken?
The law was broken by one person, who was Mr. Snowden. Now, you may think the law is unwise. You may think the policy is unwise, and if that's the case, there are mechanisms for challenging it.
Well, I also think, I mean, the way the law is being interpreted right now is so excessive compared. There's no way in the world. It's amazing. There's no way in the world Congress would have passed this law for the fall of 2001 if they had known this is where
Congress has had many chances, though, to roll it back. That's the way things work. I wouldn't call it excessive. I would call it expansive.
Can I make a point?
Yeah. Sure, Glenn.
Regarding the question of illegality, let me just say this. The ACLU and other groups have been trying for 5 years now to go into court and challenge the constitutionality of the surveillance law by claiming that it violates the Fourth Amendment. We do have a constitution in the United States regarding searches and seizures, and the U.S. government has successfully blocked any challenge on the grounds that, well, we keep it a secret who it is that we eavesdrop, and because we keep it a secret, no one person can say they've been eavesdropped on and therefore doesn't have standing in court to challenge the law. So if you want to talk about legality, the Obama Justice Department has repeatedly blocked courts from ruling on the legality, namely the constitutionality of this law. If they think it's so legal, let there be a challenge in court. Don't stop raising procedural issues to have the case thrown out, and let a court decide whether or not this really is legal.
All right.
And if it's legal, so be it, but there has been no adjudication.
In effect, you're saying sequester them, have a war room, keep them there as long as you can, or else they're lieutenants, and just hold them there in the old executive office building and just keep pounding away.
I don't know if there was a war room, but they were meeting with Chevron and other industry companies on May 7th, May 12th, ExxonMobil, Salazar with the drilling contractors. They have the Chevron CEO in there.
The CEO's not going to answer this, Mika.
CFO, sorry. And then they have others from all of these industry leaders, all these different industries, oil industry companies coming in consistently. I don't see a war room, but you guys are acting like they haven't.
No, Mika, you
keep reading these. You keep reading these
White House talking points. Yeah.
You keep reading these talking points, and yes, they did a lot more than Rudy Giuliani said they did.
Right.
But there is no evidence whatsoever from looking through all the evidence that they had from the very beginning, that they had for the first 56 days, a concerted plan and a war room to fix this.
And the government has 13 agencies down there. They're all looking at the same data. If the government thought it was a different number, they would have said something. They have experts on flow rates. Right. So I think people.
There's some interesting news on that.
Oh, you got some more points on that?
We're up to maybe 100,000 barrels. Is that right? You got some more points.
You want to know why I have a file that I've been working on with the White House, and I'll be very transparent about that? Because of your friend Rudy Giuliani, who came here last week spewing out a whole bunch of nothing.
Yeah, I'll put it into context for you. The White House talking points that you're using are completely misleading and false.
Greatly appreciate it, Tom. We'll get back to you with any breaking news. Where's Mika? Seriously, where's Mika?
I don't know. He's literally getting coffee.
Isn't it nice? She's making coffee.
She's not
Just
kidding
my
either,
coffee.
by the way.
Did she get upset at us? I guess she did. Oh, I'm such a journalist.
Did you see the little airport bottle of vodka she had there?
Yeah, I did.
What
What
vodka? I just got my tea.
No, we're kidding. She doesn't have that.
Keep the vodka
sorry.
away from mommy. Okay, Chris.
The lethality of their power is greater than ever. Their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control. And of course that bears directly on the use of force, particularly by societies that are culturally alien over other societies.
Oh my God.
Hey, welcome back to Morning Joe. It's time to, Mika, what are you doing?
Billy told me to drink a shot.
Go for it.
All right, very good. A lot of
Is
drinking
it all
going on.
right? Is the show over yet? Is the convention
That's a big
over
shot.
yet?
Take your shot.
How many more days do we
All right,
have
while
of
she's
this thing?
drinking, let's talk about what we... Oh, my Lord, what are you doing? Oh, what is she doing?
It's going to be a long week.
Holy cow!
Hey, baby.
Now we know why Poland lost all of their wars in their history. What did you learn today? And by the way, way to suck up to Tampa Bay.
It was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.